On September 1st, 1989, Motley Crue released their fifth studio album, Dr. Feelgood. It was the band's first attempt at making music while sober, and their first attempt at leaving behind what made them famous, their debauchery and decadence. Little did they know, but it would produce their best work. And what better writing material than 6+ years in the underbelly of excess? It would be one night in the middle of the madness that would spark the inspiration for much of the album, and in particular, one of the biggest hits they would ever produce. It was a night that personified how destructive their habits had turned into, a night that saw their main songwriter declared legally dead. It was December 21st, 1987, and a regular night in those days for Nikki Sixx, the bass player and founder of Motley Crue. He was drinking, partying, and shooting heroin on the Sunset Strip. But this night was a little different. Nikki had just lost consciousness after having a drug dealer shoot heroin into his veins. He knew he had made a mistake as he felt the heroin plunge to his heart and explode to his body. In an instant, Nikki turned blue and passed out. When Nikki opened his eyes, everything was a blur of light, color, and motion. Nikki was on his back and heard, "We're losing him, we're losing him." Nikki went to sit up and expected some resistance, but there was none at all. Instead, with sounds whooshing past his ears, Nikki shot upright as if he weighed nothing. As he looked up, all Nikki could see was bright white, and as he looked down, he realized he had left his body. He could see Nikki Sixx, or the body that once contained him, covered head to toe with the sheet, being pushed on a gurney towards an ambulance. Just as he was getting some clarity on the situation, he felt a not-so-gentle force grab him once again and yank him through the roof of the ambulance, landing with a painful jerk back into his body. As Nikki struggled to open his eyes, it looked like the scene out of Pulp Fiction. An adrenaline needle was poking out of his chest as the medic said, "No one's gonna die in my fucking ambulance." And then everything went black. Eventually, Nikki woke up and came to in a hospital bed. He stormed out of the hospital wearing nothing but his leather pants and got a ride back to his house. But even a near-death experience couldn't scare Nikki straight. As soon as he arrived home, he grabbed a lump of heroin, tied off his arm again, and stuck the needle back in. This was Nikki's lowest of the lows. He was so in deep with his addiction that even being declared legally dead couldn't shake him. After a long, much-needed sleep, Nikki woke up 2 days later, a new man. It was now Christmas Day 1987, and with some clarity after his out-of-body experience, Nikki knew he had gone through something spiritual and profound. He understood that drugs had brought him to his knees, but he was given another chance to live. With Nikki's near-death the catalyst, the band's management called in the rest of the members of Motley Crue. Nikki, Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, and Mick Mars all gathered, and they all agreed that they needed to go to rehab and to do it together. They would cancel the European leg of the Girls, Girls, Girls tour that was supposed to follow the holidays. They all entered rehab, and slowly but surely, all got sober. For Nikki, it was tough. He had been a serious drug addict for most of Motley Crue's existence, which was coming up on 6 years now. He needed something healthy to keep his mind busy and occupy his time. And so he dove headfirst into the healthiest of his habits, his creativity and writing. It was during one of those early writing days, with a new healthy body and a sober mind, Nikki grabbed a guitar and a pen and a pad. Nikki recalled that wild night looking at his carcass on that ambulance gurney, needing a shot of adrenaline to be stabbed into his chest to revive him, to kickstart his heart. Nikki looked back at the time in his life and started writing.
When I get high on speed, top feel funny, cause a drug for me, my heart, man, I kickstart my heart.
Nikki's mind was still in that mode of chasing the next high. There was still that itch Nikki needed to scratch, but he needed to get it in somewhere else rather than the destructive habits he had developed. He continued writing.
I was got the cops coming after me.
Years later, Nikki looked back on the songwriting process of Kickstart My Heart in an interview.
And we'd been using everything in the world, from girls, cars, drugs, rock and roll for adrenaline. You gotta kick it up a notch to still get high.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the album, had in common. That's what the song was about, and it really is about adrenaline.
Interestingly, Nikki thought it was a throwaway song and never thought it would even make the album. Nikki originally wrote the song at his house with the lyrics on a napkin. His manager was over one day, saw the napkin, asked him about it, and Nikki played it for him. The manager told him he had to show it to the rest of the band. Nikki was hesitant though, thinking it maybe wasn't quite right for Motley. Nikki later said he remembered bringing it into rehearsal and thinking that the song didn't have a hope in hell.
If it wasn't for Tommy's rhythms and back to Mick Mars, if it wasn't for the way Mick played guitar, it would just be a ratty punk rock song. It really took the three of us to make it into this big rock anthem, and with Vince's unique vocals is, one of our biggest hits we've ever had.
Kickstart My Heart was the second single off the Dr. Feelgood album, peaking at number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But more than that, it has endured as a fan favorite even 30 plus years after its release. As Nikki says, the song really set an ethos for what would be the Dr. Feelgood album. And the success of that album, their first and only number one album they had, Motley Crue proved to themselves that steering that life of excess into something healthy, like their creativity and their music, can replace the drugs and destruction they were so used to. And they could even use it as fuel.